Hey everybody, sorry if you hear Deco drinking in the background, but just saying hello. Hey everyone, hey everybody. So, you've seen everything going on, right? And again, sorry if you hear drinking in the background, that's Deco. I wanted to hop on here and talk to you all real quick. Sorry I couldn't hop on live yesterday. There were a lot of, messages and comments from you all coming in asking me to go live. But, we started that day in Washington, attending lots of rallies, protest responses there, doing a lot of organizing there, hopped on a flight, came back to New York, even more protest rallies, etc. So I got home pretty late last night, but I wanted to hop on live now to talk to you all now about what's going on with Roe. As you see here, I've got the abortion fund, National Abortion Fund linked here in case you want to throw some money to it. But I also want to talk a little bit about what we can do, right? Because there's a lot of messaging that we're hearing from leaders in this country that are making all of us feel helpless, right? Making so many people feel like there's little that we can do, or that there's nothing that we can do, or that we don't know if there's anything to do. And I'm here because I want you to know that there is something that we can do. There's a lot of things that we can do. And whether they're hard to do, or whether, people may think that they have possibilities or not, there are things that every single one of us can do, from members of Congress and the President of the United States to just you as an everyday person. That's not just go vote, okay? Yes, go vote. Voting is important, but it is necessary but not sufficient. You feel me? Voting is necessary but not sufficient. And so just telling people in general to go vote in a vague way is not helpful. Where we need to vote, what races are most important, what seats we need to protect, where we need to flip, that matters. But then also, what we're doing on the ground, grassroots organizing, etc. What is available, and also what options are available to us between now and November, so that we're not just shrugging our shoulders for 5 months and waiting to see where the wind blows in an election, but that we're actually giving people reasons, motivations, etc. to vote. So I think I'm going to start from bottom to top. I'm going to start talking about what we can do on an everyday grassroots daily life level outside of electoral politics. I'm going to start talking to you and discussing that. And then I'm going to move in after discussing what are the concrete actions we can take from a community level, outside of electoralism, outside of elections. And then we're going to move to, okay, what can we do from an electoral level? And then I want to discuss what we can do from a policy level, because there's just too much of this vibes, and I don't think that it's an approach that inspires confidence or leadership or gives us something to freaking fight for, and we need direction right now. And for anybody who wants to say, oh, AOC, you're too radical, or you don't understand the landscape, or you don't know what's going on, then give your plan. Because no plan is not a plan. Fear is not a plan. Hiding in our rooms is not a plan. And asking people for $6 all the time is not a plan. Okay? We need a plan. And so what we don't need are why we can't lists. What we don't need is just people constantly diminishing others' ideas without presenting alternatives. Okay? Right now, this moment calls on us to be relentless, I've worked with a lot of people, right? There are some people, when you ask them to do something and they try to do that thing specifically and it doesn't work out, some people just come back and they just say, I couldn't do the thing. It just didn't work. And then there are people who say, I went there, it didn't work when I tried it this way, so I tried it that way, it didn't work that way, and now I'm trying this way, and that's how we got it done. And we need that second energy. And right now, we have too much of that first energy, okay? So, like I said, I'm going to start in talking about everyday things that you can do right now, starting today. Outside of electoralism, and then into electoralism. Then we can talk about voting in elections, and then we can talk about policy, both before November and after November, all right? So there's a general structure. Now, first things that you can do as an everyday person at home. This moment requires us to all step up, every single one of us, from bottom to top, from you to the President of the United States, to me, to everybody. And what I think that we really should learn is that we cannot take these huge moments for granted. We can't have this be a moment where people just kind of step up and then the energy is kind of bad and we all get overwhelmed and dissipated and step back. This is a moment where we need to strap in, like where we need to incorporate this in actions of solidarity and community and care into our everyday actions of life. That requires all of us to be more mindful. So what are ways that we can do this in the context of abortion and reproductive justice? Number one, yes, abortion funds, continuing to give to abortion funds and abortion funds specifically is going to be important. I know people say, I want to do more than donate. I'll get to that. I will get to that. But if you have money to give, if you are in that kind of a position in society, this is now the time where we need to do that consistently. Not now, not just for a little bit, but like we need to incorporate that as part of what we do. If you own a business, you need to talk to your employees about what kind of support they need in terms of reproductive justice, of course, in many other things, but like this needs to be incorporated in a deep and ongoing way, right? And so I'm not telling people who are suffering or struggling to give things that they don't have. But what I am saying is if you are in a position, like it doesn't matter that donating might be boring or that you may want to do more, it's still important. So let's say you want to do more than just donate. Or let's say you may not have, financial resources to give, but you have talent to give, or you have time to give, or you have care to give. One of the things that we need to be doing right now is direct care and solidarity with people who need to cross state lines in order to seek an abortion. And how do we do that? Well, when you look at when you look at organizations like abortion funds that we have here, and what I'm linking to right now is a national network of abortion funds. So there are abortion funds all over the country. The important thing to do, even if you don't have money to give, is to start researching and connecting with reproductive justice organizers, grassroots organizers, abortion funds, etc., to let them know what you do have to give. Are you willing to open your home? Do you have a couch in your apartment? Do you have a guest bedroom? Can you welcome somebody? Can you offer somebody shelter, right? Maybe you don't have $300, but maybe you do have an extra room that would replace the need of a hotel cost. Everybody has something to give. Maybe you don't have an extra bedroom. Maybe you don't have a spare couch because housing is crazy right now. And these are the systems, these are the interlinking oppressive systems that we are dealing with. Maybe you don't have an extra bedroom or anything like that. What else can you do? What talents, that's when you start asking, what talents do you have? Are you an artist? Are you a writer? Do you have digital expertise? What are you capable of giving or offering on a consistent basis? On a consistent basis. Because I think one of the things that we should really learn about what happened in our country with the movement for Black lives, and let's get really real about what happened in the United States with that, is that we saw the largest mass uprising in American history. And there was so much pressure, and it was so relentless and all of this stuff. And then it was like not enough people strapped in for the long fight, right? A lot of people donated. A lot of people, donated. A lot of people put up a black square, whatever it was. But they didn't, those are invitations, right? Those are the first steps. But we need to strap in, because what happened as a consequence is that you fast forward 2 years, and then everyone is back to the same. There's a lot of communities that have just bounced back after a very brief reassessment on the role of police brutality and impunity and things like qualified immunity. A lot of those communities just bounced right back to how they were before, because not enough people in spaces like that strapped in, right? So we need to strap in there, because there are a lot of connections. We know that in the overturning with Roe, the women who are punished and most vulnerable are the poor, the Black, and the brown. But everybody suffers with the overturning of Roe, because no matter how much money you have a situation like an ectopic pregnancy that needs to be taken care of within hours. And so even if you have all the money in the world, there are situations where everybody will still continue to be threatened and affected by this. So those are the grassroots tissue that we need to start engaging in, right? We need to engage in this fight in this way. And that is important because it helps us build community. It helps us, it allows us to be transformed by the experiences of others. And those connections then start to influence others more and more and more. And that is how, that's how we really start to build mass awareness and mass movements. Someone said, let's strike. Striking is absolutely an organizing tactic as well. The labor of women is the labor of the working class, the labor of non-binary people, and the labor of men whose lives and careers have also benefited from abortions, because we need to talk about that too. All of that is the labor of the working class. And so strikes are on the table as well. Absolutely. And we also know that hourly workers, service workers, wage workers, hospitality workers, restaurant workers, home care workers overwhelmingly tend to be women. So that would be extraordinarily impactful. So we've got like the outside electoral things that we can do to help, and those things are extremely impactful. There are so many actions that people think are too small, and they want to know like what big things can we do to change all of it in one way, in one day, and it just doesn't work like that. But when we all engage in our small actions, and you start throwing sand in the gears, and if each of one of us is a grain of sand, and you're just a sand in the gear here, and a sand in the gear there, and a grain of sand here, eventually this horrible machine grinds to a halt, okay? And so don't underestimate, and don't think that what you do doesn't matter, so you stop doing it. Because every single one of us making what seems like an insignificant choice makes a huge difference. So don't feel like doing those things doesn't matter. Do not let cynicism stop us, because cynicism is really our greatest enemy here. We can do things in this moment. Everybody can do something in this moment. So I'm talking so like we're talking about that, right? Now, secondly, let's talk about elections, right? So it says you can stopping the gears to forward. What does stopping the gears mean? Okay, so when we talk about the small decisions that we can make, right? They result in different outcomes depending on what it is that you're doing. You get enough people opening their homes to people who are seeking abortion, then that means that more and more and more people are able to access this, and then the actual rules that lawmakers are making are starting to get undermined a little bit, right? But it's like, it's all of these things put together. When people start, when people start speaking up about the abortions that they have gotten in service of people in power, when politicians have pressured, Republican politicians in the past have pressured people to get an abortion, when people start speaking up about that, it creates change. And so that doesn't just happen out of the blue. You have to normalize discussing getting an abortion. So maybe you don't have a crazy, power shifting story like that, but you discussing and normalizing and eliminating the shame around this normalizes telling these stories, which then can normalize someone who tells their story that does make a shift. So these are all of the ways that our little actions that we think don't matter. Now let's talk about electorally, okay? Yes, we need to vote, but go vote is like way too broad and not helpful. We need to focus on the races that really, really matter. And I'm sorry, but I have to tell my colleagues and other folks, if you're fundraising, if you're using this moment to fundraise for yourself and your seat is not in danger and this isn't real, and like those funds aren't being directly used, like it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And a lot of those funds should be used right now to go to abortion funds or to go to real frontline members whose seats really mean the difference between, and really make the difference between staving off just a fascist calamity and holding on to what little we have while we continue to build, right? So what we really need to do is focus on where voting, where the campaigns matter, be strategic, be smart, right? So let's talk about voting in blue states if you live in a blue state, and let's talk about voting if you live in a red state. And let's talk about how you can help cross those lines, right? So let's talk about some races that are super important, or some states that are super important. Ohio, you have Tim Ryan running for Senate against, I'm not even going to say their name because I'm not even trying to give anybody any type of shine or any type of clip, any type of clips or anything like that, right? So Ohio, really important Senate race. Georgia, we need to defend both of the senators who won their races extremely narrowly in the state of Georgia. So when we talk about vote, we need to drive out the vote in Georgia. We need to drive out the vote in Ohio. Iowa, we have one of the very few swing seats that is just extremely imperiled out in Iowa for the House, and we have a Senate candidate in Iowa as well. Iowa, we need to drive out the vote in Iowa. So we really need to look at the seats near us, because many of us may live in states that maybe you don't yourself live in a swing seat, but there may be a swing seat in your state. And you can be extremely helpful in swing seats that are geographically near you if you are near one. So what I would encourage people to do is to look up the seats around you and adopt a swing seat and make it a focal point of your attention for the next 5 months. if you live in, and that's if you live in a blue area, right? Like adopt a neighboring swing seat, adopt a neighboring swing race, adopt a neighboring Senate race, and dedicate some attention to that. Because we can't just be sitting here and looking around. Also, if you live in a blue area, when people say go vote, that should include primary elections too. Because the thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about is the fact that not every Democrat is pro-choice, okay? So the ones that aren't, we really need to reassess if it's appropriate for them to continue to serve in 2022, because people should have the right to control their own body. This is pretty basic, pretty basic. And so that goes for the municipal level, it goes for the state level, it goes for the federal level. And, right now, for example, if you're in the state of New York, people think, oh, New York is easy peasy, New York, no problems. There are. No. There are. And in fact, we have a primary election this Tuesday in New York, okay? And there are a lot of Democrats, like just because you got elected once 20 years ago, it does not mean that you are entitled for re-election for the rest of your life. And the fact of the matter is, if your continued service is not helping people, and if you're serving corporations and lobbies, oftentimes the same ones that finance anti-choice Republicans, then maybe you should go. I mean, we got to really look at who is serving communities and who is coasting. And we actually have a slate in New York. There are several slates. Working Families Party has a slate. DSA has a slate. There's a bunch of slates. But just look at the policy positions, because some of the most impactful elections right now are in state elections. Because when we talk about the scariness of what happened on January 6th, it's because there's a lot of state legislatures that are willing to work and support overturning electoral college results, alternative electors, etc. So we need who's your state representative matters. And if they're doing a good job, it matters. So my view is that, for example, if you're in the state of New York, or if you're just in any state, look up your primary elections. Look them up, see if they've passed or not. There are a lot of states that the primaries have already happened. That's fine. There's a lot of states where primaries have not yet happened. And you need to look up the date of your primary election, and you need to see if that person is working for you. And those little boring little races oftentimes carry more power and more impact in your life than your federal race, than your member of Congress or your United States Senator. Because you know who impacts housing policies almost the most in your life? Your city council and your state assembly and your local community board. It impacts your direct life. And that's how decisions are made that will help you either, stave off cost of housing or make the problem worse. So focus on your local elections. They matter. Focus on your primaries. And then in terms of the general election, if your area is safe, look for a place nearby that needs your help, that really, really needs your help. And those are our marching orders for the next 5 months, okay? That's what we need to do in terms of the electoral piece of it. But now let's talk about the policy piece of it, because now this is my view. People may have different views, but my view is that the Democratic Party is not doing enough in this moment. And we can do more, and we need to do more, and we can only do more if we acknowledge that more is possible. And if all we are hearing from the highest seats in the land is, we can't do this, we can't do that, we won't do this, we won't do that, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that, then what's the plan, brothers and sisters and friends and pals? What is the plan? Because if all we are hearing from our leaders is, until we vote. That is not the most motivating message in the world to even get the outcome that you want in terms of an election, right? So here's some things that we can do. And this is what I talk about being relentless, because no is not a final answer. We need to have the mentality that no means find another way. No means try again. No means look somewhere else. No does not mean stop trying. Okay? Like, what is this attitude? We need some energy out here. Like, let's go. This is the free world. Like, come on. So, anyways, what are some things that we can do? We can open abortion clinics on federal lands in red states. Joe Biden can help us do that. Now, there are going to be people saying, Hyde Amendment this, Hyde Amendment that. First of all, little background. We tried to repeal the Hyde Amendment last year because we were anticipating this happening. And shout out to Representative Ayanna Pressley, who was leading the charge on that. And she was out here leading it. We were helping her. She was commanding this policy space and has been commanding this policy space with so much authority. And she was leading the charge to repeal Hyde. When we were negotiating with House leadership, this was one of the pieces that we were negotiating, was to get Hyde repealed. Now, there are some people that were trying to, basically shrug on this out of fear. They capitulated. There was a desire to capitulate on this point. So now we're where we're at now, right? But that doesn't matter. So even you say, oh, what about Hyde? What about Hyde? First of all, we can commit now. We can commit to repealing Hyde. We can make that commitment. But secondly, if that shouldn't be a no. That means find another way. You know what I think we should try? Let's try using federal lands. Let people access medical abortions, at least, pill abortions, and let people administer to themselves pill abortions on federal land so that they can't be arrested by these states. How about that? How about that? Like, no does not mean stop. No means find another way. And our command right now is to be creative. Also, we just went through 4 years of a Trump administration where he tried doing something and people said, you can't do that. And you know what he said? I'm going to do it anyway until you stop me. Where's that energy here? Where's that attitude here? Because wouldn't a challenge to this and even allowing people to continue to receive care for 3 months until a court strikes it down, isn't that better than nothing? Than doing nothing at all? Showing people that we're willing to get in there and throw a punch and take a knock for the people? Like, let's go. Let's go. We can educate people about the availability of pill and medical abortions. We can do that because an enormous amount of people have no idea that this is an option that's even available to them. And they think that they have to, that there's no choice but to go into a clinic and get a certain kind of procedure and this, that, and the other. I think the statistics on this are very, very high on lack of awareness on this. So that is something that we can do right now. Additionally, even if you codify Roe, we need to address the underlying democratic and legitimacy crises that the Supreme Court is currently representing. Because we have several members of the United States Senate that came out yesterday. They are not, quote unquote, radicals like me. They are very sane, responsible people like Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Collins, who actually came out and said that they were misled by Supreme Court justices when they were candidates on Roe, that they were significantly misled. And that should be a record scratch crisis scandal moment. Like that can't just be a headline that comes and goes. We are talking about several members of the United States Congress saying that a candidate lied to them in order to seek and secure a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land. So if they're going to come out and say that, they need to say, are there going to be any consequences for an individual who misleads members of Congress in order to seek an appointment, in order to secure an appointment? This is a real crisis that the United States Senate needs to address right now, like right when they reconvene. Because if we are going to normalize lying in order to secure seats on the court, then what that does, and if we just allow that and just allow it to come and go, it undermines the entire confirmation process to begin with. And here is where we are starting to dig into some of the issues of legitimacy of process and institution. So if we're just going to let that happen, then doing nothing is not a neutral decision. Doing nothing is accepting the erosion of the confirmation process. Doing nothing is to accept the legitimacy of appointments, or rather the questionable legitimacy of these processes. And when we do not enforce rules and when we do not offer consequences for misconduct, then we allow misconduct to be the norm. And that cannot stand in a democracy. It erodes the rule of law. Out of the 9 Supreme Court justices, we have 7 that have been appointed by a party that has not won the popular vote more than once in 30 years. We are cementing minority rule, and they are continuing to rule outside of their jurisdiction, because I think the vast majority of Americans agree that the ruling yesterday was a dramatic overreach and abuse of the Supreme Court's power. The whole reason the Supreme Court issues their opinions is to further legitimize the institution. In sharing their rationale with the public is supposed to reaffirm the public's faith in the court. However, what does that mean when the Supreme Court's opinions are all over the place, when they're disjointed, contradictory, and have no real basis or grounding? Because you can't on Thursday say we're going to overturn states' rights in order to preserve the Constitution. You can't say that on Thursday for guns, and then on Friday say, oh, we're going to overturn constitutional rights for states' rights on Friday. Even within the single opinion on the gun ruling, for example, you have this idea of setting a historical marker that we can't regulate guns like any more or any less. It has to be pinned to what we have done in history, whether it's the 1700s or the 1800s. But so you have to pin it by then, or you can't use modern laws to apply because they didn't exist back then. But then you also can't consider modern guns within that same opinion. And so the court is delegitimizing itself, not anybody else, not Congress, not the public, not the president. The court's conduct in its decision to overreach, in its decision to invalidate constitutional rights, in its decision to, and also in the court's conduct, you have Clarence Thomas, whose family was taking money from right-wing organizations for years and failed to disclose it, and his wife was part of the insurrection, and he then used his seat in Congress, on the Supreme Court, to vote to prevent documents potentially relating to his wife's activity from reaching a congressional investigation. Those are the actions that are delegitimizing the court, not anybody else discussing it. or acknowledging or reporting the facts of the situation. The court is eroding, and it is eroding under Chief Justice Roberts, and it's eroding with the actions of Clarence Thomas. It's eroding with its decisions to overreach, and it is delegitimizing itself. We have a government of checks and balances. The president has checks. Congress has checks. The Supreme Court's checks and balances are nowhere near sufficient right now compared to the strength of the checks and balances in the legislature and the executive branch. So this right now is a moment that calls on invoking checks and balances on the overreach and abuse of power in the Supreme Court. How do we do that? We must restrain judicial review. We must review the potential of expanding the court. We must examine what jurisdictions and rulings are available. You can take power away from the Supreme Court. It is constitutional. It is not even something that is debatable. It is in the Constitution, and there are very clear instances of violating the law, failing to disclose a financial source, particularly one that is politically motivated, for years is a violation of the law. So are we going to hold nobody accountable? Because the failure to hold misconduct accountable legitimizes that misconduct. It is also not unprecedented. Abraham Lincoln disregarded the court in order to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. Because the court, especially in its ruling on Dred Scott, was overreaching and reaching a point of illegitimacy because it was stripping people of basic civil and human rights. Lincoln disregarded the Supreme Court and issued the Emancipation Proclamation. When you had FDR in the depths of the Great Depression attempting to pass the New Deal and restore the United States, granted it was racialized, all of that stuff, but let's just talk about what he was attempting to do here. When he was trying to pass the New Deal and finance things and establish things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and the Civilian Conservation Corps, when you had all of this activity happening during the Green New Deal, you had a highly conservative court that was attempting to stop any sort of recovery from the Great Depression. So what did Franklin Delano Roosevelt do? They started getting to work, finding every single legal nook and cranny to fight back. And he took his options to the people, and he started threatening to expand the court, and he took his fight to the public, and ultimately, what legitimizes institutions is the public. It's you. It's the people. And so that's what makes the difference in a moment like this. Because you and the people understand and recognize much of the legitimacy crises surrounding the Supreme Court. How do we know that? We know that because, I'm just making sure you guys can hear me. Okay, we know that because you look at Gallup polling and U.S. public confidence in the Supreme Court is at some of the lowest levels in American history. You all know that this is not okay. And that public power is what legitimizes a check on the power of the Supreme Court. If the president was attempting to do this without public approval, without public opinion, that would then call into the legitimacy the president's actions. But people know the score right now. They understand what's going on right now. And so we have the power of the bully pulpit. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, back in that time, ultimately did not expand the court. But the court did not undermine the New Deal. They backed off. Sometimes demonstrating what you are willing to do is enough. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Right now, the Democratic Party, no sticks. Not even talking about the sticks. And even if you codify Roe by a very small sliver of a majority, you still have the underlying crises that will continue to yield all of these emergencies until they are ultimately addressed. So what we need to do is get in the game, every single one of us. If you are out there on the ground, you know, the marching orders are open your home, connect and research an abortion fund near you. If you can donate and support them, do that. If you can offer your couch or give them, you know, if they're taking volunteers, do that. Those are some of the outside kind of work that you can do. If you can create art, if you can post up, do that. If you can write, do that. If you can offer to manage their social media account, do that. Just let them know what talents, what treasure, what rooms, what things that you have, and they can lead the way because they have been organizers here on the ground. So many of them, working class women, poor women, black women, white women, Latina women that have been working on building this movement for a long time. We're not starting from scratch, okay? We just need to amplify and uplift those who have been doing the work, right? Now, that's the outside organizing. You look at the electoral piece. Electorally, number one, research if you have a primary election coming up. Because there's too many people here that are getting a little too comfortable doing way too little. Or they're taking money from the wrong places, or they're not centering or serving people. So number two, research if you have a primary election coming up and see what your choices are and vote for who you think is the best choice. Here in New York, we've got primary elections coming up on Tuesday. Look up the Working Families Party slate. Look up the DSA for the Many slate. Just research your options. And if your candidate does not have a website, does not have social media, is not easily researchable or accessible in any way, maybe that's a problem. But check that out, okay? So look at your primary elections. Secondly, on the electoral part, if you're in a blue space, if you're in a blue place, then look for a swing seat near you and start gearing up to help support and do what you can. You know, give a couple hours a week, give a couple hours a month, whatever it is, give a few minutes, whatever it is you can do. Take a look at the landscape and see if there's a swing seat near you. See if there's a Senate race near you that you can help on. Sorry, my light's all over the place. That you can help on. And just start spending a little bit of time or even just a little bit of your attention. Even if you're just looking them up and following them on Twitter or on Instagram. Like, you start creating the conditions of consciousness around you, right? Start following organizers. Start following the people around you that have dedicated their lives in this space so we can all absorb and learn a little bit by them. So just see what you can give, a little bit of attention, a little bit of time, or just focus a little bit. Just be aware of the swing seat around you. That's what we can do electorally between now and November. And then lastly, the people in charge need to try harder and dig a little bit deeper than asking people for $6 and a vote, because that is too vague and that is a failing and unfocused strategy. So what we need to do is articulate the plan. How many seats are we going to pick up? I don't want to hear about what the president is not willing to do anymore. I want to hear what the president does plan to do. Because if all we're hearing is no, 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 then what are we going to do if we win a majority? We need to know what the plan is. So what are we going to be, what do we actually have the votes to do if people are able to send us, protect our existing majority and send us 2 more senators? What are we able to do with that? What are we able to do if somehow this ruling created such a ground shift that there is a window here to pick up to 60? We need to focus more on what's possible with the 52 but we also need to be able to articulate a vision of what is happening with 60. Because it's not just about a wish list. It's not just about what is possible in a very head in the sky type of way. It's about what we actually have the votes for. Because we can't have people saying this, and that is possible if the president doesn't actually want to do it. So the president has a responsibility to communicate to the party and to the people what he is actually capable of doing beyond just a simple majority to codify Roe, because we have underlying democratic and institutional crises here, okay? So that's where we've got the plan. We have I believe we have executive actions that are available to us right now before November, and doing that and using that is important because it demonstrates and it proves to people that we are willing to use authority when they give it to us. We can't keep asking people for their vote, and then when they vote for us, we don't use the authority that they give us. Take it to the limit, bring it to the map, understand that this right now, we're in sudden death overtime, okay? Leave it all on the field. We can't have people who are valuing polite norms over rights, because when that happens, those people will have neither very soon. Very, very, very soon. So that's kind of all I got. I just had to get it out there because right now we're seeing a lot of leaders not meet the moment, but we have time. We still have time to do it. But we need to meet the moment right now. We can't just sit on our hands and wait till November and not give a plan and not give a vision. We got to get in the game. We got to chop and get it moving. We need a little bit more hustle in here. I think we can hustle more. I don't think that it's a defensible position to say there is nothing else that we can do. I do not believe in that kind of helplessness. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever. Because no matter who you are or where you are, there is always something that you can do. Doesn't matter how small or how little you feel or how powerless you feel. It doesn't matter if you are the leader of the free world. There is always something that you can do. And each one of us has a responsibility to do it. And so I want you to know, in light of that, in spirit of that, what our commitments are and what we're trying to do. So as you've seen on the grassroots level, yesterday, I sent out campaign emails, fundraising emails, only for abortion funds. Not for me, for abortion funds. So that's what we're doing to help support our organizers on the ground. I have also, on that first point, and I want to thank you all so much, because not just in the course of this stream does it look like we've raised $60,000 for national abortion funds, but in our emails and fundraising since yesterday, we have raised over $300,000 for abortion funds in Michigan and Texas and all across the United States, to help people who need that help come to New York, because New York, or other kind of safe harbor states, but we have fundraised that to help people come to our state, because we have protected and advanced and built a political coalition that will not just defend Roe, but codify it and protect it. And so we've done that in New York. We've done that. You all have raised over $360,000 in the last 24 hours or so to help people who need abortions get that care. So that's what I've done on the grassroots point. On that second point, on that electoral point, I also want you to know that I have personally vetted and endorsed an entire slate of candidates for the New York primary on Tuesday. We've got a lieutenant gubernatorial candidate with Ana Maria Archila, who is a frontline activist, and not just an activist, but an organizer, an expert on so many of these issues, who is also, by the way, specifically a champion and ascended as a champion of reproductive justice. So New York, elect Ana Maria for lieutenant governor. And then we also have a huge slate of state assembly and state senate candidates that we've also endorsed. So you can go, I think I might have posted it on my Instagram, but if it's not on mine, check out the @TeamAOC one where all of the endorsements are posted. Look up the Working Families Party of New York. Look up DSA for the Many slate, so you can see if you have a candidate, one of those candidates running, and vote for them, because like so many people, frankly, who should not be in office get elected because no one votes in primary elections. And it is such an easy lift to be able to do that. So that's the second point. Now, in terms of helping additional frontliners, one of the first things that I did when I was in Congress was that I sent the maximum support possible to every single Democrat in a swing seat. And I am, I'm not saying I'm the only one that's done that, but I'm one of, not everyone has done that. So I will say, I'll just say that, right? And I'm not trying to put anybody down or anything like that, but because people always like to say, what have you done, etc. And then policy-wise and legislatively, the House, we've worked, first of all, we're working our behinds off to get Hyde repealed a year ago. Did other Democrats not want to do that? Yes. Did other Democrats fight against that? But I want you to know what we've been working on the inside. So we've been fighting like hell ever since I got sworn in to get us to repeal Hyde. And I'm hoping that in this moment, we're now going to be able to turn up the notch on getting repeal of Hyde. But we did pass the Women's Health Act. And I'm probably getting the specific title of it a little off right now because I'm in the moment, okay? But we did pass those protections, and the House has demonstrated a willingness to codify Roe. It's stuck in the Senate. And so, but that's not to say that we haven't done our job. And on top of that, in terms of our local community, I worked last year to secure $3 million for East Elmhurst Hospital, a public hospital that does not turn away anybody based on their health insurance status, that will treat every single person at the utmost of care, regardless of ability to pay. We secured $3 million for East Elmhurst Hospital's maternal health wing, which means that all people are going to be able to secure their maternal health and address also the Black maternal health crisis. And on top of that, that $3 million that we secured for East Elmhurst has now grown to a considerable amount, and it looks like we'll be able to expand to an entire health pavilion for reproductive health for everybody from prepubescent girls to people who need hormone therapy in order to either transition to people who need maternal health and who need pregnancy care and prenatal care and postnatal care. So I just want you to know exactly what I'm up to, on top of the advocacy and trying to identify what is possible in the executive branch and push for that as well. So I just want to let you all know that there is so much that we are capable of in this moment. I hope I have shared with you at least one thing, that one action item that is within reach for you. And I just want you to know that we're in this together. And no matter what happens, we're in this for the long haul. And that's what this is about. This is not about being helpless. And I really do plead to my fellow Democrats to not project that helplessness when there is just so much that we can do with specificity and with power. So I love you all so much. Keep making trouble. Be a sand in the gear. and let's go win this thing, because that's what I'm focused on. Let's go win this thing. All right. See you all. Bye-bye.